Every empire believes its money will last forever. Everyone has been wrong. They think their currency is different, immune, eternal. But the truth is etched in ruins and faded coins. Throughout history, from ancient Rome to modern times, a pattern haunts the rise and fall of nations. It starts with trust, wealth, and glory, and ends with a currency in ashes. In the golden days of each era, money is solid, real. In Rome's early days, a silver denarius could buy the world's goods, and everyone from senators to soldiers trusted its shine. In medieval kingdoms, a gold coin bore the weight of a king's honor. In modern times, paper and digital notes promised endless prosperity. For a while, the illusion holds. Economies boom, empires expand. People believe the value in their purse is as constant as the sun. But beneath the surface, greed and desperation begin their quiet work. The money is about to die. Rome, 3rd century AD. The Roman Empire stretches from desert to island, rich and confident. Roman roads bind the world, and Roman coins fuel it. Each coin, a denarius, once nearly pure silver, has started to lose its soul. Generations of emperors have been quietly cheating, mixing in cheap metals, stretching the silver farther, minting more coins to pay for endless wars and grand temples. The change is subtle at first. A coin still gleams, but the shine is a little paler. Emperor after emperor, from Nero onward, trims the coinage, fighting wars, buying loyalty, feasting on games, all with silver that isn't there. By the 3rd century, the denarius is a ghost of itself. Once 95% silver, it's now barely 5%. A copper disc washed with a whisper of silver. Romans feel the change in their bones before they understand it. Prices creep up, then surge. A loaf of bread that cost 1 coin now costs 10, then 50. The treasury mints frantically, flooding the markets with coins that clink but no longer comfort. Soon, merchants weigh coins or bite them to test their worth. Some refuse the imperial money altogether. The rich hide their old, honest coins, melting them or hoarding them in villa walls, while the new coins pile up in the streets like fallen leaves. Then comes the breaking point. The illusion shatters. Markets stall as nobody trusts the little discs of metal. Soldiers, paid in nearly worthless coins, demand more and more just to feed their families. The empire's borders tremble as troops threaten mutiny for real pay, gold if they can get it. In city forums, angry voices rise. Our money is no good. Shops close, unable to price their wares in a currency losing value by the week. Inflation roars through the empire like a firestorm. In a desperate decree, Emperor Diocletian fixes prices by law, trying to outlaw the inflation. But reality cannot be decreed away. Instead, goods vanish from the market. Farmers won't sell grain for a pile of junk coins. People trade in secret, barter bread for wine, cloth for wheat. The currency no longer connects them. Trust is broken. Roman coins, once the empire's nervous system, become scrap metal. In the shadow of Rome's marble arches, families shivered, not for lack of money, but for lack of money anyone trusts. Yet even in this chaos, some people understand how to survive. A few wealthy patricians and cunning merchants saw the writing on the wall early. They converted their wealth into something more eternal. Land, gold, tangible goods. A senator with vast estates can demand rent in grain or labor. His wealth is real, beyond the emperor's mint. A merchant with a warehouse of olive oil or wine can trade essentials when coins fail. These people thrive as others despair, trading depreciating coins for timeless assets. Debtors, too, celebrate in quiet corners. What they owe in denarii becomes easier to pay as each coin loses value. A loan that once could cost them a villa can now be repaid with a sack of cheapened coins. In Rome's great inflation, wealth is not so much destroyed as transferred, slipping from those who hold mere money to those who hold real things. The empire itself staggers. As money fails, the state falters in paying its legions. securing its frontiers, feeding its citizens. By the time new, more stable coins are introduced years later, the damage is done. The Roman Empire, unbreakable no more, has learned that no empire is stronger than the soundness of its money. The fall of Rome is a story of many failures, of leadership, of defense, of morality. But etched in that story is a stark economic lesson. When currency dies, chaos follows. The mighty empire was brought low in part by the slow decay of trust in a small silver coin. Centuries pass. The names of emperors fade. The Colosseum stands as a ruin. But the pattern does not die. Kings and sultans take up the habit, diluting gold with alloys, clipping coins for a bit of extra profit. Each time they believe that they're clever, that wealth can be conjured by deception. Each time reality catches up. England, 1540s. King Henry VIII sits on the English throne, headstrong and extravagant. He's fighting costly wars in France and Scotland and building palaces to dazzle the world. The treasury grows thin. Henry finds a solution in alchemy, not by magic but by manipulation. He orders his mints to change the recipe of England's coins, mix copper into the silver, squeeze a bit more currency out of the same gold. It's called the Great Debasement, though no herald will announce it. At first, his subjects hardly notice. The coins are slightly different, a bit lighter in the hand, but stamped with the same proud king's profile. Henry spends the new money lavishly, funding his wars, hosting banquets, rewarding loyalists. But coins travel fast, and truth travels faster. Soon, foreign merchants in Antwerp and Venice weigh English coins and offer less for them. Word spreads that English money is not to be trusted. At home, prices for imports rise. Common folk need more coins to buy the same goods as last year. The new coins start showing a red blush of copper where the thin silver wash rubs off, particularly over the king's nose on the coin face. People whisper a mocking nickname, Old Copper Nose. In taverns and markets, traders carry small scales, weighing each coin, suspicious of the king's currency. Good, older coins vanish from circulation, hoarded or melted for their metal, while Henry's debased coins flood every purse. The people feel cheated, and they were. Henry effectively taxed them all by stealth, stealing a little value from every coin. Inflation gallops. By the end of the debasement, English money has lost much of its buying power. Some say a pound now buys what a few shillings once did. Wages lag, savings shrink. The trust that underpins money is eroding with each coppery coin passed hand to hand. Henry, triumphant in his short-term gain, never fully sees the long-term cost. He has drained the wealth and credibility of his realm's currency to fill a temporary need. When Henry dies, he leaves an economic mess for his heirs. His young son's regents continue the policy briefly, but soon even they see the futility. Within a few years, the crown must embark on a painful process to restore honest money. New coins are minted with proper silver content. Old copper-nose coins are melted down. It takes Queen Elizabeth's reign to fully restore faith, recalling all debased coins and replacing them with newly minted coins with an accurate value. The lesson is clear in hindsight. Even a king as mighty as Henry VIII could not bend the laws of value without consequence. Debasing the currency gave him a moment of illusory wealth, but it sowed distrust that damaged the economy. Merchants became wary. Trade suffered, and common people bore the hidden tax of rising prices. The Great Debasement earned Henry infamy that outlasted his victories, a cautionary tale that money is a covenant of trust, one that once broken is hard to repair. The pattern played out yet again in a different land, in a new guise, not with silver coins this time, but with printed paper promises. France, 1789. The streets of Paris roar with revolution. The people have stormed the Bastille, and the old regime is no more. Liberty, equality, fraternity are the new banners, and with them comes a bold experiment in money. The new revolutionary government inherits an empty treasury. Years of royal excess and war have bled France dry. Gold and silver are scarce, but the nation is rich in land, especially the vast estates of the church, now seized by the state. So the revolutionaries try something daring. They issue paper notes called assignats, backed by the confiscated lands. At first, it seems brilliant. Land is tangible wealth, and the notes are promises on that wealth. In 1790, the Assembly issues hundreds of millions of assignats. The public, hungry for change, embraces them. A farmer in Provence accepts assignats for his wheat, confident the new money will rebuild France. A Paris merchant takes assignat for a fine suit, believing in the revolution's honor. Confidence fills the air along with the rhetoric of a new age. For a moment, France feels flush with money and possibility. The government pays debts, stimulates the economy, and people rejoice that prosperity is at hand without the king's taxes. But power has a way of testing limits. The needs of the new state are enormous: armies to equip, riots to quell, the hungry to feed. Soon, 400 million assignats aren't enough. They print 800 million more by year's end. The wheels of the printing presses turn day and night beneath the halls of power. By late 1791, over 1 billion assignats flood the economy. Prices begin to tick upward. The assignat buys a bit less than before. Some whisper that too many notes are chasing too few goods. But the revolution's leaders dismiss such worries. They believe a controlled inflation can revive trade and fund the nation's rebirth. Then war erupts with France's neighbors, and the printing presses go into overdrive. By 1793, billions of assignats are in circulation. Once promising currency is losing value by the month. What cost 5 livres in assignat last summer might cost 10 this spring. The spiral has begun. Inflation is no longer an abstract theory. It is the daily experience of every citizen. In Paris, the markets become scenes of desperation. A woman selling bread now demands twice as many assignats as she did last week, just to keep up with soaring costs. Salaries, if paid in paper, become nearly worthless in days. A huge debtor class rejoices quietly. If they borrowed in assignats, now they can repay in currency that is worth a fraction of its original value. Their debts melt away just as in Rome long ago. But the common workers and savers, people with fixed wages or pensions, find the world turned upside down. Their savings in a little wooden box can't buy even a candle now. Pensions for war widows can barely purchase a loaf of black bread. The revolution that promised to uplift the masses is impoverishing them through the silent tax of inflation. By 1795, the situation is beyond control. The assignat has lost 99% of its purchasing power from its early days. Bundles of notes trade for a single coin of gold or silver, if you can find one. Shop windows are empty because merchants prefer to hoard goods than sell for worthless paper. In the countryside, peasants revert to barter, a sack of grain for a jug of wine, a service for a meal. The proud new currency of the revolution is now junk paper littering the gutters of Paris. People paste assignats as wallpaper or light their pipes with them. At least they burn. With inflation has come chaos. Crime rises as desperation sets in. Mobs storm bakeries and warehouses, convinced that some must be hoarding food or keeping goods off the market. In one incident, washerwomen in Paris demand death to anyone who refuses to sell soap for assignats. They are that desperate for basic necessities. The government, panicked, tries both carrots and sticks. They pass the law of the maximum, imposing price controls on grain and bread and other essentials, hoping to curb the pain. Soldiers raid homes for hoarded flour. But price controls only create black markets and empty shelves. You can decree the price of bread, but you can't force bakers to bake when money has no meaning. Under the Jacobins' reign of terror, France slides toward tyranny in the name of saving the economy. The guillotine works overtime, not just for political enemies, but for profiteers accused of sabotaging the currency by charging high prices or trading in gold. Fear hangs over the markets, yet no fear can force the assignat to hold value. In the end, reality wins. In 1796, after countless lives disrupted and a society strained to the breaking point, France abandons the assignat. In a public ceremony, the revolutionary government hauls the printing presses and engraving plates to the Place Vendôme. Before a hushed crowd, they smash the machines with hammers and burn the paper stock in a towering bonfire. The fire that day consumes more than paper. It consumes a national illusion. As ashes of worthless money float above Paris, the truth sets in hard. You cannot print prosperity without consequence. Amid the wreckage, some emerge unscathed, or even wealthier. A class of savvy survivors had seen what was coming. Shrewd financiers and merchants converted paper into gold or foreign currency early on, shielding their wealth as the storm hit. Some bought art, jewels, or property with assignats when they still had value, trading ephemeral currency for lasting treasure. When the assignat burned, their assets remained. Land speculators who paid for estates in near-worthless paper essentially got land for a pittance. Debtors of all kinds had their burdens lifted as their loans evaporated in real value. But the working poor, who had only their daily wages in assignats, were ruined. They ended up holding the billions of worthless notes, their labor stolen by the invisible tax. The French Revolution's grand experiment with paper money ended in hyperinflation, a devastated economy, and a lesson written in hunger and fear. That lesson? When money dies, it's the most vulnerable who suffer most, and the cunning or fortunate who walk away richer. It's a pattern as old as the Caesars and as current as tomorrow's headlines. Nowhere was this pattern more dramatic than in the 20th century, in a nation renowned for its poets and philosophers, and for one brief terrible time, for its money that became as worthless as the paper it was printed on. Germany, 1923. A decade prior, Germany was defeated in the Great War, but still hopeful for recovery. The Kaiser was gone, a new democratic government in place. But the war's aftermath weighed heavily, crushing reparations demanded by the victors, and a populace trying to rebuild from ruins. Germany's treasury was empty, its industries damaged, and political unrest simmered in the streets. To pay what it owed and to revive the economy, the Weimar government made a fateful choice. It began to print money. Lots of money. At first, it felt like salvation. Factories whirred to life. Workers were paid. Goods traded. Unemployment fell. For a while, the mark, the German currency, seemed to defy gravity. The government printed and spent, and prosperity stirred as if conjured by a wizard's spell. Bridges were repaired, businesses got loans, Berlin's nightlife sparkled once more. The wounds of war felt like they might heal with enough money. But the cracks showed quickly. Prices were rising faster than in living memory. By 1921, the mark's value was slipping daily. A loaf of bread that cost a mark before the war cost several marks, then dozens. The war reparations were denominated in gold or foreign currency, which Germany struggled to obtain, so they printed more marks to buy those. The more marks they printed, the less each was worth, a vicious cycle spinning faster. By 1922, the German mark was in free fall. What cost 1 mark now cost hundreds, then thousands. The speed of price changes became dizzying. Families would rush out to buy essentials as soon as wages were paid, because by evening, prices would be higher. Employers started paying workers twice a day. Their morning pay might buy lunch, their afternoon pay needed for dinner on the way home. Shops pegged their prices not to currency but to time. An egg might cost 5 marks at 8 a.m., 8 marks by noon, and 20 by nightfall. People carted money in baskets and wheelbarrows, not to show off wealth, but because simple groceries required piles of notes. Banknotes lost their value so fast that theft of a wallet became less appealing than theft of an apple. Children used stacks of money as building blocks or coloring paper, since it was cheaper than buying toys or drawing pads. Restaurants stopped printing menus. By the time the food arrived, the prices had gone up. It was surreal, absurd, and terrifying. And yet, even in this carnival of chaos, there were those who understood how to turn collapse into opportunity. Amid the financial ruin walked a man named Hugo Stinnes. While middle-class families saw their life savings turn to dust, Stinnes saw something else, a chance to own the very real assets of Germany for pennies on the mark. Stinnes was a businessman, an industrialist who grasped the secret of surviving hyperinflation. Do not hold paper money. Hold anything else. As the mark plummeted, Stinnes borrowed as much as he could in marks. He took out huge loans in the worthless currency, promising to pay back lenders later with interest. Those lenders were happy to give him money. After all, on paper, he'd pay them back more than he borrowed. But the paper lied. Stinnes immediately took those borrowed marks, each day more of them as needed, and bought things of real value. He bought factories from owners who were desperate for cash. He bought coal mines, ships, timber yards, rail lines. As others frantically sold assets for the paper currency just to survive, Stinnes scooped those assets up. Each day, the loans he owed became easier to repay. By the time they came due, inflation had made their real value close to zero. What remained tangible and constant were the businesses he now owned. While an entire class of shopkeepers and clerks sank into destitution, Stinnes rose like a baron above the flood. They called him the Inflation King. By 1923, he owned a staggering empire of companies, thousands of them. His coal powered the trains, his ships crossed the oceans, his factories churned out steel and chemicals. He even bought newspapers to control the flow of information, shaping opinion in a time of panic. In a land of people who couldn't afford a loaf of bread, he could buy the bakeries, the mills, and the farms. To the average German, each day was a fresh hell of confusion. Prices running away, salaries worthless, neighbors scavenging for food. To Stinnes, each day was a shopping spree, in a market gone mad. He paid off mortgages for the price of a postage stamp. He acquired estates for the price of a piano. His story was not one of luck, but of strategy and nerve. He understood that when money dies, those who hold it die with it, but those who trade it quickly for something real can thrive. Like the patricians of Rome who swapped denarii for land, or the French speculators who swapped assignats for gold, Stinnes swapped marks for an empire. And he was not alone. Though none moved at his scale, many who sensed the coming storm protected themselves. Farmers held onto their produce and land, refusing paper. They bartered food for labor or goods. Shopkeepers with stockpiles demanded payment in more stable foreign currency or goods in trade. Anyone who could escape the mark. Meanwhile, those who trusted the government, who kept their life savings in marks or their pensions in fixed payments, were wiped out utterly. The teachers, the retirees, the clerks and craftsmen, all cast into destitution through no fault of their own, victims of the currency collapse. By the end of 1923, the German mark was practically dead. Prices reached into the trillions of marks. The country that had been one of the world's most advanced economies fell into primitive barter. Peasants in the countryside refused paper, only trading their eggs and milk for hard currency or tangible goods. Cities saw impromptu barter markets, a pair of shoes for a sack of potatoes, a watch for some meat. Faced with utter breakdown, the government finally stopped the madness. They introduced a new currency, the Rentenmark, backed by land and industrial assets and strictly limited in quantity. Overnight, the hyperinflation halted. The wheelbarrows of money vanished, replaced by a few new notes that actually held value. Life stabilized, though at a heavy cost. Germany's middle class had been financially obliterated, its economy deeply scarred. As for Hugo Stinnes, the return of stable money meant an end to his magical run. He suddenly had to operate in a normal market again, with debts that no longer melted away and competitors that could no longer be bought for scraps of paper. Within a year, the inflation king passed away, only 54 years old. Some said he worked himself to death. Others whispered that perhaps he saw what was coming next. Without the tailwind of hyperinflation, parts of his empire struggled. But it hardly mattered. For a time, he had shown what one could do by betting against a dying currency. He had demonstrated in flesh and blood the stark rule of currency collapse. Wealth is never destroyed, only transferred. When the music stops, those holding paper lose to those holding things. Weimar Germany's lesson was searing but clear. A nation that debases its currency eats its own savings, its own people's future, to solve a present crisis. And always, without fail, a clever few will turn that self-destruction into their advantage. Across these stories, Rome, England, France, Germany, the pattern holds as if guided by an invisible hand. First comes the flourish of good times, or the desperation of crisis, that tempts leaders into creating money from thin air. Next, the gradual then sudden loss of faith, the public realization that the money is a lie. Then the chaos, the scramble to real value, the breakdown of normal life, the rise of survivors and the fall of the masses. Finally, a painful reset, a return to something real. New coins of honest metal, old lands exchanging hands, new regimes coming to power promising never again. But again and again, never again, lasts only until the next time. Today. The pattern is repeating, but with a twist. The debasement of currency has gone digital. No one is clipping coins or hauling banknotes in wheelbarrows, at least not yet. Instead, we have central banks and keyboards, screens, and servers. The architects of our modern economy have learned to speak in euphemisms. They don't say printing money, they say quantitative easing, liquidity injections, accommodative policy. They don't clip coins, they click mice. Yet the effect rhymes with history. In the last decades, especially since the financial crisis of 2008, and then during the pandemic in 2020, the world's major central banks opened the floodgates of money creation. Trillions of new dollars, euros, yen, and yuan have been conjured with a few strokes of a digital pen. Interest rates were pushed to near zero or even below zero, making money almost free to borrow and spend. Governments ran massive deficits, mailing out checks, funding wars and welfare, all with money that didn't seem to cost anyone anything. For a while, it seemed like magic. Stock markets soared to records. Housing prices shot through the roof, making homeowners feel wealthy on paper. Big corporations borrowed cheap and bought back their own shares, boosting values even more. Unemployment fell and storefronts bustled. It looked like we had finally found a way to cheat the old cycle, to create currency ad infinitum and only reap prosperity. There were warning signs, of course, but many chose to ignore them. If you looked closely, you saw the price of real things creeping up relentlessly. The cost of a home, of healthcare, of education, of assets like gold and land. Even as gadgets and imported goods sometimes got cheaper, the fundamental things in life were rising in price, quietly signaling that the value of money was slowly draining away. But complacency is a powerful drug. For a long time, consumer prices in many countries rose only mildly year by year. Central bankers nodded sagely and said inflation was under control. People believed that this time was indeed different. After all, we're a sophisticated modern economy. We have computer models and PhDs managing the money supply. Surely they wouldn't let it get out of hand. Then, the world changed almost overnight. A pandemic swept the globe. Governments spent without restraint to keep economies afloat, and central banks printed like never before. In 21 alone, the United States created trillions of dollars. By some measures, nearly a fifth of all US dollars ever issued were conjured in that single year. Other countries did similarly. The numbers were enormous, almost abstract. It was hard to fathom. Figures with 12 or more zeros, money that seemed imaginary. For a brief moment, this flood of new money seemed to have no downside. Stocks roared back after a crash. People spent their stimulus checks. Lines at food banks shrank. Jobs returned. It was as if the laws of economics had been suspended. But they hadn't been. They were just lying in wait. By 2021 and 2022, the latent pressure exploded. Inflation, thought to be tamed, surged in country after country. Suddenly, prices for everyday necessities leapt upward. Gasoline doubled, food staples jumped, rent and utility bills surged. People who had grown used to stable prices were jolted awake. A new generation learned that prices can rise faster than paychecks, that the 50 you kept in your wallet now buys noticeably less at the grocery store. The comforting hum of stability was replaced by an uneasy question. Is our money losing its value, just like in the history books? People started asking, how much money can we create out of nothing before it means nothing? The echoes of Rome's clipped coins, of French assignats, of Weimar marks resonated faintly in the background of our collective memory. And just as before, those who paid attention began to act. Gold, that ancient hedge against human folly, gleamed anew in vaults and safe boxes as buying surged. Real estate, especially farmland, and houses in stable areas became hot commodities. Energy assets also saw renewed appreciation. And then there's the new contender, Bitcoin and its brethren. In the ashes of the 2008 crisis, a mysterious figure or group created a digital currency with a simple premise, a money that no government could debase. Bitcoin's supply is capped by code. It cannot be printed or altered at a politician's whim. It isn't metal to be clipped or paper to be overissued. It's maintained by a decentralized network of believers. For years, it was mocked or ignored by the financial establishment. But as trillions in fiat currency poured out, Bitcoin surged in value. To some, it became digital gold, a new hedge against the folly of central bankers. Suddenly, serious investors and even companies and small nations started to accumulate this strange new asset, just in case the old money system cracked. It was a sign. The instinct to seek refuge from currency debasement had moved into the digital realm. The tools of escape are different: gold bars or digital keys, real estate deeds, or energy stocks. But the mindset is the same as in ages past: preserve value, hold what can't be made overnight out of thin air. The characters today might not be Roman senators or German industrialists. They might be tech billionaires buying farmland, or middle-class families installing solar panels and stocking pantries. They share a common creed across time: trust the tangible, distrust the promise of easy money. The gulf between the blind and the far-sighted grows. Many continue as before, assuming the system will right itself, that the currency in their pocket will hold its value because, well, it always has in their lifetime. They see rising prices as a temporary inconvenience, not a warning. They keep their wealth in cash and bank accounts, in bonds paying meager interest, unaware that the ground is shifting beneath them. But a growing number see the pattern and are sounding the alarm with their actions. They quietly move savings into inflation-resistant places. They know what Hugo Stinnes knew, what a French merchant in 1790 knew, what a Roman landowner knew. When money starts to rot, trade it for something that doesn't. It's a strange moment in the modern world. We have technology and knowledge beyond the wildest dreams of past societies. Yet we are repeating a very old story. The scale is global now. The debt loads are astronomical, the money creation mind-boggling. Everything moves faster. News, transactions, crises. Yet human nature hasn't changed. Governments still reach for the printing press or its digital equivalent at the first sign of trouble. People still want to believe that this time we truly can get something for nothing. And so the same drama unfolds in slow motion on a worldwide stage. Will it erupt into an outright currency collapse? A Weimar-scale nightmare? Perhaps not in every country, perhaps not all at once. But cracks are forming in the edifice of paper wealth built over the past decades. Inflation, debt crises, the erosion of trust in institutions. These are the tremors that warn of a larger quake. The wise are making ready, just in case. They diversify, hold a bit of gold, maybe a patch of land, some shares in essential industries, perhaps a little Bitcoin. They remember that every empire, every era, believed it can't happen to us. And they know that those words have been the prelude to every great fall. Our modern money, be it dollars or euros or yen, is the lifeblood of the global economy. We trust it for now. But history teaches that trust can be squandered, and once lost, nearly impossible to regain. Perhaps our era will find a way to pull back from the brink, to unwind the excesses gently and restore honesty to finance. Perhaps. But if it doesn't, the collapse, when it comes, will feel sudden, even though it's been years in the making. One day, the screens might blink and exchange rates spiral, or a banking holiday is declared, or prices double in a month. When and how are uncertain, but the pattern tells us what it would mean: a whirlwind of panic for the unprepared, and a window of opportunity for the prepared. This is not a prophecy of doom, but a reminder of responsibility, because unlike the Romans or the revolutionaries or the Weimar Germans, we have their stories as guideposts. The script is written in our history books, if only we read it. The lesson echoing across millennia is simple: no currency stays sound forever if its masters abuse it. Value resides in what is real: land, goods, knowledge, creativity, energy, not in the symbols we use to trade those things. When those symbols multiply without limit, they chase the real value away. In every age of monetary folly, there are those who suffer and those who soar, not by chance, not by favoritism of the gods, but by choice and foresight. The survivors of currency collapses were rarely the most affluent to start. They were the ones who sensed the change in the wind, who moved their sails accordingly. They were the ones who owned what couldn't be printed, who trusted their own eyes over the reassurances of the powerful. A humble farmer with a piece of productive land, a widow with a pouch of gold coins, a merchant with a stock of essential goods, a programmer with a hard drive of Bitcoin. Different eras, different assets, same principle. They hold something real while others hold paper promises. Every generation likes to think, this time is different. It's human nature to believe we're smarter than those who came before, that we'd never repeat their mistakes. Yet here we are, walking down a path that loops through history. It's as if there is a great forgetting every few decades. We forget that money is a fiction of trust, and when stretched too far, that trust snaps. We forget at our peril. Still, there is hope in knowing the pattern. Our story hasn't ended yet. We are not mere spectators, doomed to watch a tragedy. History's lesson can be a warning and a guide. The wise among us are already taking heed, and it's never too late for others to do the same. Hold something real. Learn from Rome's fall, from France's chaos, from Germany's nightmare. Think of your wealth not in terms of currency units, but in terms of sustenance and solidity. How many years of food, how much energy, what roof over your head, what tools and skills. Wealth measured in life, not in slips of paper. As the world teeters on the edge of another potential metamorphosis of money, ask yourself, when the music stops, what will you be holding? If the answer is merely a number on a bank screen or a stack of notes with fading ink, you may find that wealth evaporate like a mirage. But if it's land or resources or something forged of human ingenuity and need, it will remain as the mirages fade. Every empire believes its money will last forever. Every empire was wrong, but individuals can learn where empires do not. The story of currency debasement is a cycle, but not an endless one, because each cycle ends with those who prepared picking up the pieces and rebuilding anew with a cleaner slate. When you stand at the edge of a cliff, knowing those before you fell, you have a choice. Step blindly or take a step back. We have that choice now. History doesn't repeat, so the saying goes, but it rhymes. And its echo is loud this time. If you listen closely, you can hear the ancient voice in the whirlwind. The voice that whispered in Rome, in Paris, in Berlin. It's telling us what comes next if we don't change course. Yet history's rhyme need not be a dirge. It can also be a guide to survival. Collapse is never inevitable. It is a consequence of choices. And better choices can always be made. As we conclude this journey through the ages, one image lingers, a tapestry of scenes across time. A Roman patrician bearing his last honest silver coins for safekeeping. Henry's subjects watching the king's face turn copper on their coins. French women warming themselves by the bonfire of burning assignats. German children playing with bricks of money as their parents despair. And now, perhaps, a modern family swapping some savings for gold, or a young investor opting for Bitcoin, or a farmer turning part of his field into a vegetable garden, not entirely trusting the supermarket or the currency. The thread connecting these scenes is a simple desire to preserve value, to hold on to something real when illusion falls away. It is a hopeful thread because it means that no matter how often our systems fail, human resilience finds a way. The curtain falls on empire after empire, but someone always carries the light through the darkness. A bag of coins, a book of knowledge, a seed for planning, a spark of innovation. In the story of dying money, there is a rebirth of wisdom each time. The illusions are stripped away, and for a while, people see clearly. We are perhaps approaching such a moment of clarity. Let the final words echo the first. Every empire thinks its money will last forever, but money is only as eternal as the truth behind it. We, the living, must decide what we hold on to when illusions fail. Because in the end, it's not just currency at stake. It's our homes, our hopes, our humanity. History has given its verdict time and again. The question now is, will we heed it? Will we be among those few in every age who hold something real when the world's money goes unreal? The choice, as always, is ours. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, it would mean the world to us if you like the video or subscribe to our channel. We truly believe that understanding the past is key to navigating the future. And by studying financial history, you are better prepared to safeguard your wealth than 99% of the people out there. If you have any questions or remarks, or would like to request a video topic for our next deep dive, please leave a comment down below. We aim to reply to all of them. Until next time.